Welcome to Mindshifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie. Michael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rakhma. Michael is the author of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce.
To the brightness within you and the truth that is rooted within me.
Hi, and welcome to Mindshifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce. And we are here at Heartland in Theodosia, Missouri, and we are on our 8th day. We finish up tomorrow, our 9-day Why Is This Happening to Me Again intensive. We have a morning class, finish up after lunch, and then we get ready to start with a dinner and an evening class of teachers training the same night, and we go for another 9 days. And that's the extent of the time that Michael and I will be at Heartland this year. We take off to head up to Canada for his family reunion. So it has been very high energy here. We have 31 people actually, and for this 9 days, and it looks like there's about 26 of them staying for the next 9 days, and then we've got some new people coming in. So it's real exciting. It's awesome to see the work that's going on, the people that are willing to dig in deep and face what's coming up, what they've hidden within, that they've not wanted to deal with, not wanted to look at. And forgiveness is our main tool that we teach here and also when we're on the road. Forgiveness is not what this culture looks at as you and I interact and I become angry, but I will forgive you for bringing up my anger. And that does nothing to my anger. And that is pardoning, which is a nice thing to do. It has some good energy to it, and it can help you to unlink your anger file with whoever it is that you supposedly want to blame it on. They're actually just your trigger. And what we teach is I'm going to go inside and remove my anger so that regardless of what happens in my world, that I can stand in the space of being connected to my source. And that source, whether you want to call it God, love, whatever, it's what keeps us alive. You know, Michael tells a story during a lot of the workshops about the rose and the butterfly. This is also on our website under stories, quotes, and links. So imagine we have a rose and a butterfly, and they meet, they fall in love, they have a wonderful time together. And one day the butterfly flies away. The rose, because it thinks that there is nothing greater than the love of that butterfly, uproots itself to chase after the butterfly. What happens to the rose when it uproots itself? It's going to die because it put something else more important than staying connected to its source. Well, our source is love. It says the Creator created us in His image, and it says God is love. So that's what we are. We are created as love. It's the stuff we're made of. We always ask people at the beginning of their workshop to describe the essence of a newborn baby. Not that it was crying because of the way it was jerked into the world, but the essence of that newborn. And everybody's words are always some variation on the theme of love. They'll say it's awesome, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's pure, it's a miracle. Those are descriptors of yourself. We each came in that way. Then the world begins to put thumbprints on us and expectations, and then we create a false self. That's actually something that we're getting ready to go into in our afternoon workshop, is how we create that false self, and then the power person and the codependence and all of that. So we're going to discuss that here at Heartland, and when Michael comes up, he's still down there finishing up class, so I'm going to talk until he gets up here. And so maybe he'll go into a little bit of that on the show. But we start creating in our own mind a self that we think we are, who we think we need to be for others to approve of us. We mix up approval for love. And we begin to operate out of that self. And then eventually the true being that we are, in most cases, it seems to get buried underneath all of the other stuff. We'll ask people a second question in our workshops, and we'll say, have you ever done something that now you regret that you didn't? And if everybody's honest, they'll say yes, they'll raise their hand. And so we say, okay, go back to one time when you did something that now you regret that you did, and think of what you were feeling that motivated you to do whatever it was you did, and describe what that feeling was. And most people come up with guilt or shame, afraid, angry, all of these emotions. And then we tell people to look at those two lists. We've actually made these lists on the board. And so look at the two lists. There's nothing in this second list of what was I feeling when I did something I regret that describes the newborn. It is not part of who you are. Yeah, it may be things that you've done, things you've engaged in, feelings you've felt, but it's not your identity. It's not who you are. You are still that being that we described as that newborn. And so what do we have to do? You know, we said that, okay, we create this false self and we move into this other side. And so what do we have to do to get back to being who we really are? We have to remove everything that's unlike that. And sometimes that's not Dr. Feelgood. You know, we've gone through and we've talked in the intensive here how our thoughts actually become a chemical in our body and it becomes our physiology. Some of the things that I personally, I won't tell on anybody else that's here, so I'll just use myself, is that I've had fear in my life. And so dealing with that fear and allowing it to come up and look at it, you know, you can bury it down and pretend like it's not there and say everything's just hunky-dory and there's nothing wrong with me and I've got it all handled. But if it's still underneath and you really haven't dealt with it, it's still churning. It's kind of like having a trash can in the kitchen that really needs to be taken out. I can go by there and spray air freshener on it every hour and can get by with it. But eventually the trash has to go out because then it's going to start getting bugs and everything else in it. So it's the same with us. You know, we hold these things in our body and we get bugs. We call them diseases. And the only way that we're going to get back to true health physically, mentally, and emotionally is to go in and remove those things, to get rid of the trash, to dump what doesn't belong in us. Everything that's unlike the love that we were created to be, we have to get rid of. And so sometimes facing that is not Dr. Feelgood, because what happens, you know, as we put those energies into our field, it creates symptoms that looks like disease. And so as we release and those energies move out, they create the same symptom. It looks the same going both ways. The only difference is which direction is the energy going. Is it going in? It's creating a disease process. If it's going out, it's what naturopaths call a healing crisis. It doesn't look good. It doesn't feel good. But if you keep your eye on the fact that it's moving out and not in, then you can stay more focused on where you're going and move through it. My mother used to say, this too will pass. So we stick with the path that we're going on. We can look at the circumstances and create the circle all over again. Just let the cycle start over. It's kind of like, and I've used this example before, in scriptures it talks about that Yeshua, also known as Jesus, was walking on water. There was a great storm going on. The disciples were in a boat. And one of the disciples, Peter, wanted to get out and walk on water with Jesus. And he said, well, come on, step out of the boat. And as long as he kept his eyes on where he was going and walking towards Yeshua, he walked on water. The storm was still going on, but he was focused and he was moving through. As soon as he took his eyes off of where he was going and started looking at the storm, fear came up and he started to sink. And he was like, I'm going to drown. And that's the way we are in our life. You know, we have storms going on, things going on in our world. And if we lose track of where we're heading and we start looking at the circumstances around us, we'll sink. So this work is about, okay, how do I remove all those things? You know, like I said, in my own, I'm working on some fears that I've carried in my life for generations and removing that fear so that my body can go back to total health. Because right now I've had some aches and some pains and things like that, and I haven't done anything that would, quote, unquote, cause that pain. And so I know that I'm working through the next layer, and it's being willing to go through it. And it's not been such a fun process. And so that is kind of the direction that I'm heading this show until Michael gets up here. So if anybody has a question or a comment about anything that I've said there and you want to call in, I'd love to hear from you. The calling number is 646-200-4169. Then press 1, and that puts you in queue to talk to me. I'm trying to talk and watch the chat room at the same time, and also my email. You can write in the chat room. I'm monitoring it. And my email is Jeanie, Jeanie, at whyagain.com. And so you can email me, and I can also pick up questions there. So multitasking here. It's definitely hot, but we're staying inside, staying pretty cool, except the inner temperatures are rising. It has been phenomenal. There have been breakthroughs, and it's always like popcorn. You know, something comes up for one person that they've experienced something that they say, you know, quote, unquote, somebody did to me. There'll be somebody else in the room that they did that thing to somebody else. And so we get those two people up in front of the room and let them talk back and forth to each other and heal, hearing the other side, the other perspective. And it's been phenomenal healing. And so it's definitely a high energy place. It's a safe space. Everybody knows that, you know, it's okay to bring it out and bring it up, and everybody else is sitting here holding the space for healing. I do have a caller, area code 970. You're on the air.
Hey, Jeanie, it's Carrie in Colorado.
Hi, Carrie. Are you back in Colorado?
I'm back, and I got back faster than it took me to get there, which was great. I'm very, very thankful for that. And
awesome.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say what a great time I had. Thank you so much. And anybody who is listening or listens in the future, it's just such a phenomenal thing to come and be in that intensive energy and with you guys and go through, you know.
Carrie, I just lost you. I heard you talking about the energy, and then you've disappeared. Your voice has dropped off. If you can hear me, Carrie, we can't hear you. Okay, she's dropped off. Maybe she'll call right back in. I see Dr. Tim is with me. Hi, how are you doing?
Jeanie, are you there?
I am. How are you? You're coming to join us tomorrow, huh?
Yep. So I'm at the car repair place getting it ready for the long trip.
Awesome.
So I'm not.
Well, we're looking forward to you being here. There's out of our group of there's 31 people here. There is only 6 people leaving, and 4 new people coming. You being one of the 4, and so it's really the energy is already going to be pumping and rocking when you get here. So you're just going to blend right in. It's going to be great.
Good deal.
Awesome.
Good deal. We were talking to Mark, who's going to ride down with me.
Right.
And we're going to take Rex back home with us. So it's going to be an intense 10-day period.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be great. And Ari's staying with us through Friday at least, maybe a little longer, but at least through Friday. So that's an experience for anybody in itself to be able to. He's just the top chef. He has been, he's top shelf too. He's been here since we began the 10 days of food fund forgiveness, and then through the 9-day why, and then he's going to be through the majority of the teacher's training. So we're glad to have him here with us and his energy that he adds in the food. So that's great. And I see Carrie's called back in again. Let's see if we can get her this time. Hey, Carrie.
Hey, Jeanie. Can you hear me this time?
Yes, I can. We could hear you pretty good a while ago, and then you just disappeared.
You know, I don't know. I have a weird service out here. It isn't always really good, really great. So comes and goes. Hey, I have a question for you, and I wondered if you guys have ever discussed this. It's not anything I've heard Michael talk about, but I wondered if you've ever been involved in a conversation about this. I'm starting to think, after being at the intensive, that we actually offload our stress to our pets, like whatever hostility or fear or maybe issues we're carrying around. Maybe they pick up the same blockages. And I don't know, have you ever talked about that?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
then I was thinking how to help free them up from that, you know.
Well, I don't know if you were here when Monica got the phone call. Were you here then?
No, I wasn't.
One of their participants
remember she was talking about her cat.
Yes, she was really unloading and going through some stuff, and found out then about an hour later that her cat died at the same time that she was going through that. And she was talking about it this morning, that she knows that if she hadn't come to Heartland and started working on her issues, that heart attack actually would have been hers. And Michael has talked about, and he's with us now, so Michael, you might want to address that then.
Sure. Over the year, back when I had a private practice, I noticed that animals would die of the same diseases as their owners about 3 to 4 years before the owner would. And I think that energetically, the animal, some people say, maybe comes to help the owner to deal with that, to take it off, to serve and to support them. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I think that the animal has no ability to refuse that vibration from the owner, and so tends to take it on and play it out. How do you handle that? Well, if you remember in the intensive, the answer was all of the above. You heal yourself. You stop forcing that energy into the animal that it can't refuse it. And as you do that, you open the space for the animal to let loose of all of that.
Nice. That's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah. I just wondered, cool. I just wanted to get your input on it. Nice. So, and Jeanie, I thought your expression of the power person at the beginning was really good. I really liked it. It was very insightful and kind of replacing the approval of the power person with love. That sentence I thought was very dynamic and helpful.
Oh, thank you. Michael, what she's talking about, until we were waiting for you to get on the show, I was explaining a little bit of what we were going to be going into, the power person and the codependence, and a little bit about what that was from my perspective. So you may want to carry on that conversation too. Thank you, Carrie. I appreciate the acknowledgement.
Sounds like you've covered it beautifully.
I'll go ahead and hang out, but I just wanted to ask about the pet thing, and it's kind of what I thought, and I might do some energy work on my dog too. I just realized, man, wow, everything in our world is just an out-picturing of what we're carrying around inside, and so.
Well, if you look at what you shared with me before you left about the folks that you know and their dog bit somebody, and that they had anxiety about whether their caretaker person was coming back, and the animal would naturally outpicture that, would naturally express.
Yeah, very much so. And I look at my dog. It's interesting. When I got home, my dog has got a really big. She's dumping. She's just totally detoxing, and she's got diarrhea. She's actually got worms coming out. I mean, that's kind of yucky to talk about, but I'm looking at her going, oh my God, she's dumping toxicity that I was carrying around. She was activated in her by being around me, and now that I've gone through so many more shifts, she's just starting to dump. It's really cool. It's exciting, and
that's it exactly.
Yep, awesome. Okay, well, I'll sign off. Yeah,
Carrie, you were talking about doing energy work on your dog. You can breathe them. We actually had a lady, it's been 2 or 3 years ago, that she had a horse that stepped into a mole hole and twisted his ankle, and it was down. And she thought that she was going to have to have it put down. And she laid down beside of the horse, and she was rubbing its neck and just doing the still point breathing in its ear. And she said in just a few minutes, the horse's whole body just like shuddered, and it got up, and it was fine. And,
wow.
But it had picked up on her breathing, and she called us and was so excited. She's like, it works on horses. She was,
and you know what? I've been kind of lying next to my dog, like, doing a similar thing since I got home, and she just looks at me like, oh, that's really neat, and I love it. I love getting a deeper sense of, realizing that every single thing in my world is just an out-picturing of the resonance that I'm carrying around inside myself. And so as I clear that, it's going to change. I kind of already knew it on an intellectual level, but I feel like I've gotten it on a much deeper level, much, much deeper.
There's a neat book on this topic that you might want to read called Kinship with All Life. I forget the author's name. I read it probably 25 years ago. Really cool book, Kinship with All Life.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, well, you guys have fun, and thanks again, and we'll certainly be in touch soon.
Blessings.
We were
Thanks
glad
for coming.
you were with us.
Delight to have you here.
646-200-4169. Press 1. That puts you in queue. Michael, Dr. Tim is with us on the phone.
I figured that was Dr. Tim you were talking to when I came in, and I heard you talking about the energy was rocking and be ready for him when he got here. Hey
yeah,
there, Doc.
absolutely.
How are you doing, Tim?
I'm doing well. I'm just exercising patience while the car gets worked on. So I'm not in the best place to chat on the radio, but wanted to listen into the show and stay in the flow of things, prepping for being there tomorrow.
Well, we look forward to your arrival, and I don't know if it's noise in the background you're concerned about, but you're loud and clear.
Great. Well,
So any exciting stuff coming up as you're preparing for your journey?
Well, I don't know if I suppose you call it exciting. It's a lot of emotions, a lot of, had a wonderful trip with my brother, and 2 days of fishing on a river in northern Michigan. So just wonderful to get back into nature and reconnect that way. And lots of stuff gets stirred up when I'm with my family and we're talking about big changes in life recently and old times. So, but so far, very pleasant, very open and accepting so far.
Cool. Well, you'll be coming into a hotbed of activity. There's just so much. The group that's here is so connected and so interwoven and so supportive with each other. It's just phenomenal. And this morning's session was extremely powerful. And, you know, we have this awesome group of people, professionals, lay people, just all kinds of different folks. And person got up this morning to share about memory during a worksheet that came up of being 4 years of age and being sexually abused by some teenagers and how that's impacted his whole life. And, you know, my estimate is that in this culture over the years, what my observation is that at least 60 to 70% of people in the culture have been in some way, shape, or form sexually abused. And this morning, as that was being shared, and how it impacted his life in so many ways, and the courage it took for him to stand up. But that about that percentage, about 80% of the people in the room, when I asked the question, how many have been sexually abused, put their hand up. And our culture's in such denial. And the denial, one thinks, of course, that they can keep it hidden, and therefore it's not a big deal. It's gone now. You just don't. In fact, at the just before we finished the session, one of them had said, you know, when I was 37, I remembered being sexually abused, so I went to my father, and my father said that he'd been sexually abused when he was a child, and he just put it away and forgot about it. So, sweetheart, you just forget about it. Don't just pretend it never happened, and then everything will be okay. And, you know, everything isn't okay when you put something like that away, because whatever it is that you put away now becomes the definition of what comes in your life, of what happens next and what shows up. So it's just, I mean, what a powerful space this morning for everybody. I went down there with planning to present some information. So much for the best laid plans of mice and men. But it was just an awesome space. Awesome.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it. Well,
we're looking for you guys arriving.
Yeah, have we heard any word from Rex about whether or not he needs me to bring my bike rack? Or
no, I haven't. I haven't heard the latest on that. I'll have to check with him and get back here. I'll text you.
All right.
Cool. So is someone doing the support group while you're down here?
Yep, one of my good friends and longtime members, and she's got the DVDs for the 2 Tuesdays I'll be missing, and she's ready to roll. She has
Fabulous.
keys to the facility, and so yeah, that sexual abuse theme is just so powerful. In the past 3 days, I've had several contacts from people about this. One is an existing patient who sent me a book she's been writing about her life and asked if I could review it before we get together again. And it's all about the sexual abuse and the father. And then somebody that I went to grad school with contacted me on LinkedIn and said he wanted to get together with me. And I didn't really want to connect with him on LinkedIn because what I knew of him as a person in grad school, I was convinced that he fit all of the behavior patterns for somebody who was what we used to call a psychopath, and now they call it a sociopath. So I just clicked on his profile to see what's up, and sure enough, sexual abuse in his past, and he's written a book about it, and he's, tried to turn it into something for the betterment of himself and others. And so it's all over the place. I'm sure it stirred up a lot of stuff in me about how I judged him from grad school days and on, and my sending him love and hoping that he's corrected some of those behavior patterns that were so disturbing when we were in grad school together.
You say the behavior patterns were disturbing?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, he would,
Oh, so you're saying it's something outside of you disturbed something inside of you?
Well, no, I'm just talking about when people cheat on their families and they're very upsetting things with patients, and so that there was just a lot of turmoil around him. He was always in crisis, and so I did my best to just keep distance from that when I was in grad school with him. So, and I had a lot of, my response to it at this point in time, learning it, was just taking a look at how I judged that, and I'm sure more will be coming up, but it was just very timely, let's say, that in the past 3 days I've had 3 contacts from patients, or 2 patients and 1 former fellow student.
Yeah, cool. And you might benefit from a shift in language of recognizing that when I was in grad school, his behaviors brought a lot of disturbance up in me. I wish I'd had the forgiveness tool to process through those, and could have perhaps supported him in moving through those things way back then.
Yeah, I do from time to time go through those pangs of wishing I had these tools earlier, but also then just knowing it has to be enough to have them now and use them to the best of my ability. So
it is a blessing, isn't it?
It is a blessing.
So our calling number is 646-200-4169. Jeanie, anything happening in the chat room for us to be aware of, or any callers with their hands up?
Nobody has their hand up. Everybody's sitting on the switchboard just listening. Peacemaker's right on. He was saying, from his perspective anyway, when we reject a feeling and don't go inside and look at it, that it appears that someone else in the world plays out the feelings that we project. In one way or another, we have to confront it sooner or later.
That's absolutely what it takes.
So I started talking about, I was just going to say, I talked about the power person a little bit, but I didn't go into a lot about codependence. So perhaps you'll touch on that. Sure.
Well, and if you look in the archives, there are, I think, 16 days of shows where we covered the whole codependence topic. So you go back, I don't know, what was that last, probably March or April, something like that. So if you want to jump in and look at the whole series on codependence, but basically the approach we take for codependence is a little different than the general world way of looking at it. And in this work, we define codependence as believing that somebody outside of me can cause something to happen inside of me. And that when I language that something outside of me has caused something to happen inside of me, then I dissociate from what's happening inside of me, and I'm now in a codependent relationship. They're the cause of this. They made me angry. They made me sad. They made me afraid. They hurt me. You've ever said that to anybody? You really hurt me. You have a problem. Well, of course, the question I ask in that context is, if they were the one with the problem, why am I the one with the pain? I'm the one with the pain because I'm the one with the problem. That doesn't mean they don't have a problem too. But if my focus is on the fact that they have a problem while I have one, then I'm in trouble. And so what I want to do is own, if I'm in pain or turmoil of some kind, I need to get out of the codependent language. I need to move into responsibility communication. So I look at something that happens, and I say, that really brings up pain for me. That really brings up sadness, grief, rage, guilt, fear, whatever it is. And I need to run away from that because that's, dangerous, as opposed to, I'm a being called love, and my love can embrace and bring healing to any of this that happens. So I move out of the codependent language into responsibility communication, and I get to come back into relationship with the parts of me that hold energies that never belonged in the human system. Guilt, grief, rage, hate, fear, anger, sadness, condemnation, gossip, slander, vengeance. None of those things ever belonged in your human energy field, or mine, or anybody else's. But if we came by it genetically, and then our environment plays it out, which it does in spades, then we're going to tend to be stuck in those codependent patterns, and we'll always believe that somebody else is the problem. Somebody else is the cause of what's going on inside of me. And with that belief, you never get to heal. When you discard that belief and you go into responsibility and you recognize that you have grief, fear, rage, hate, anger, sadness, pain of some kind, that the person who brings that up for you, number one, is responsible for what they're doing, but in fact is giving you a gift. They're not to blame for what's happening inside of you. You're not to blame for what's happening inside of you. They're not responsible for what's happening inside of you, but you are. And when you take responsibility, that becomes the key to walking and working through that issue, whatever it is, and getting free of it. So we want to move out of codependent relationships, and one of the key ways in doing that is to utilize responsibility language, is to own what's going on inside of us, and by taking responsibility, accepting things that are otherwise inaccessible, and forgiving those things. And forgiveness in the work that we're doing has nothing to do with letting somebody else off the hook because there's some sort of hostility, fear, or pain in you. Forgiveness is how you remove the hostility and fear and pain in you. When you get done with it, you get over it, get finished with it, instead of playing it out again and again and again. So it's a big project and a big process. And if you believe that somebody else is the cause of what's happening in your mind, then you're locked right into codependent relationship. And guess what? If you get rid of that person you are codependent with, you will find somebody else to play it out with. What we're looking to do is to create a sufficient level of understanding of the tools and the use of the tools to free not only ourselves, but every mind, heart, and being on the planet from that codependent dynamic, which means, ultimately, to free every mind, heart, and being on the planet from pain, turmoil, and trauma. The beauty of doing that is we then create a space on planet Earth where it's safe for human life to show up. And when you have a space that's safe for human life to show up, you put an end to war. That's one of our projects. Let's put an end to war. Let's honor those who've been forced into the insanity of war to kill or be killed, to maim, to suffer, and the suffering and pain that brought upon their families and their communities. the suffering, the pain that they brought home with them, and support that healing process. And let's create a space that's safe for actual human life to show up on the planet, for us to live as human beings, that is, as this awesome active presence of love that we were designed to be. And you do that when you engage in and you embody your human life, this awesome active presence of love that you were designed to be. If you ever have any doubt about what a human life is, just hold a newborn child. You'll know exactly what it is. And by choosing to engage in and bring about your human life, you will change the world. You will become part of the team to change the world. And we're looking to create that team and for you to be part of it. We're delighted
We
to
have
be
a
here on
caller.
the show with us. Oh, cool. Let's go for it.
970, you're on the air.
Hey, Jeanie and Michael, it's Carrie with another thought. I just wanted to say, like, in light of what you're saying right now, Michael, how impressed I am, just one more level of how practical and logical and result-producing these tools are. I mean, practical, logical, grounded, and result-producing. It's amazing. And on the way home from the intensive, I just randomly listened to a little bit of, kind of health radio shows because I was just curious. I thought, I want to just see how those compare to what I've now immersed myself in. And you just realize when you listen to a lot of them how just helpless a lot of the solutions are. They're not really going to get people to an end result where they get clear and they shift, and they're kind of palliating things. And I just wanted to express my appreciation and just say around what you're saying, these tools are so logical, rational, and I know they were really designed by one of the most, brilliant or evolved or something people that was ever on the planet. And they're just so much more useful than just about anything else you're going to hear in the world. I just wanted to say that because I'm so struck by that too as I come home and how much people really need these to get through things and to learn how to become clear and have really happy, healthy lives.
Well, if you look in the one of the first pages, the early part of my book, I have a section on it called Life Without Tools, and the bottom line conclusion is life without tools is hell. And that's where most people live. They simply accumulate from generation to generation every hostility, fear. If you look at things like hostility and fear as a virus, these generational patterns are accumulated, these viruses are accumulated until somebody acquires the virus removal tool and says, oh, time for me to get out of this, time for me to go through this and get finished with it and remove the virus from the bloodline. And when you do that, everything starts to shift and change. And that's what we're here to do, is to shift and change it.
Yep. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. And I would love to hear you even share a little bit about the evolution of how you put these pieces together, because I think that's fascinating, if you feel like it.
Well, basically, the tools have come together. I started this journey out of a need to heal myself. Almost died 3 or 4 times the first year of my life, first 25 years. Lived on an inhalator and pills and saw that it was killing me. And so I started to look for a solution. And then I had the blessing of finding this man named Yeshua who had put it all together, who understood it. And when you go back to his original language, which I became involved in working with the Aramaic language, and as I started to understand what he was actually saying, I realized that the Greeks had not a clue. And most of what we see in his teachings of this culture is Greek philosophy. It's not Yeshua's teaching at all. It's not Yeshua's teaching at all. And because if it were Yeshua's teaching, then the people who are talking about it would be healed. They wouldn't be doing war. They wouldn't be doing hostility. They wouldn't be doing fear. They wouldn't be doing grief and rage and guilt and pain. They'd be finished with that, and they'd be getting on with human life. And that's what we're here to do. So as I started to understand what Yeshua is actually talking about teaching, it was like, well, what else is there to do but to clean this mess up? And so I started in my own space, cleaning up my own life. And as I started to understand on deeper and deeper levels what that meant, physically, mentally, emotionally, relationship, finances, it affects every aspect of life. And so we're here to support every aspect of life healing and moving forward. Hold a newborn child, we're here to support you moving forward out of your newbornness, out of your true human life. And so that's what the game is all about. That's kind of a thumbnail sketch of where it all came from, and I so deeply appreciate the work that the man named Yeshua did and presented to us. And then I had the blessing of meeting a man named Dan McDougall, who was an attorney who owned an ancient manuscript called the Khabor's manuscript. And so for the last quarter of a century or so, I've gotten to work with the original words of Yeshua in Aramaic. And because my background is in electronics and a side study in physics, I more and more, and then naturopathic medicine as well, and more was able to come to his work. You know, he says, and this does come through accurate in Greek, he says, you've got to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. Without that, you can't hear what's being said. So because of my varied background in electronics, physics, and naturopathic medicine, when I came across it, it's like, I see that. Oh, I understand. Oh, this is a physics language. This isn't a theological language. This is a genetic language. Oh, this is a psychological language. They knew exactly how it was going and how the whole system operated. So when you got the eyes to see and the ears to hear that, it all makes sense. And then when you start studying with those brain cells available, then you understand what the tools were that he taught and how to use them. So I had the blessing of getting to run into Dan, who was an absolute genius, and partnered with him for several years, co-authored a course called Laws of Living. And, the result is we're taking this to every mind, heart, and being on the planet, and we're glad that you're on the show with us to share it. If you haven't accessed the forgiveness process yet from the Aramaic, remember, it's got nothing to do with I let you off the hook because of what's happening inside of me. It's I have something happening inside of me. Thank you for doing the behavior you did that showed it to me. And now I'm going to go in and hit the taliki. I'm going to go in and remove what never belonged. What never belonged is any form of hostility or fear. That is the design of this structure called a human form. Notice I say human form because the fact that there's a human form present does not necessarily mean there's a human life present. So the human form is designed for the energy that it was designed for. And all you have to do is hold a newborn child to know exactly what it was designed for. It was designed to embody human life. What is human life? It is this awesome active presence of love. And so anything that's unlike that presence doesn't belong in your structure. And if you come from a bloodline that's in the tradition of the world today, and you know very well what insanity is. And we define insanity as a human life, a human form, without a human life, without the active presence of love. And so we're here to support, to encourage, to empower you and every mind, heart, and being on the planet to live a human life. And to live a human life, you don't have to figure out what a human life is. You don't have to find one. You don't have to make it up. You got one. You are one. All you have to do is forgive what never belonged in you. And when you do, your human life shows up. And the whole game becomes such an awesome experience that it's beyond exciting. So, Carrie, I hear you loud and clear exactly what you're saying about how exciting it is, and when you were here at the intensive, how enthusiastic you would get as we went to each new level and each new depth. So we're getting ready, and, you having been here, your genetics are now kind of keyed into the whole process. So in the next 9 days, just stay tuned in, and you'll get the whole download of what's going to happen in these next 9 days, and it's going to be pretty powerful. We've got, I think we're going to have 26 people here, and every kind of dynamic. We've got military minds here. We've got pretty high-level business minds here. We've got, housewives. We've got other therapists. We've got just this really wide range of people, and it's going to be a hot time in the old town over the next 9 days here at Heartland. We actually finished the 9-day Why Is This Happening to Me Again intensive tomorrow morning, and then we begin the 9-day teacher training tomorrow evening. So we're just kind of on it and rocking along. So, Jeanie, any callers, any questions, anything happening in the chat room?
No, it's quiet on the home front. So nobody has their hand up. If you're on the switchboard and you want to talk, press 1. That puts you in queue. If you want to call in, it's 646-200-4169. Press 1. We'd love to hear from you.
And if you and I were sitting having the conversation you've heard so far in the last 45 minutes or so, what would your question be? Well, is there something about what we're saying that is illogical or doesn't make sense? And by the way, I started to say go to the website and pick up the worksheet process and put the pen to the paper and go to work with it and watch how your life changes. It will be nothing short of unbelievable and miraculous when you actually start to put the pen to the paper. If you go to www.whyagain.com, on the right-hand side there's a link that says Download Worksheets. Our new site coming up soon will be whyagain.org. Only the extension will change from com to org. And the link for the forgiveness sheets, the reality management process, will be up near the top. And so tap in, download the first 7 links. You'll have a copy of Chapter 24 of my book. You'll have the latest worksheet process. And you'll have 5 different radio shows where we've guided somebody through the whole forgiveness process. We invite you to take those tools, put them to work in your life, and share with us what your results are, and or as you're engaging in listening to those shows and starting to put the pen to the paper with the worksheet, if some piece of the puzzle doesn't make sense to you, there's some confusion or you need support, we're here for that support. That's our whole reason for doing this show, is to support you. And, of course, as we support you, I really shouldn't say our whole reason because, of course, we're supporting us too. And, that's what it's all about, is opening that space for the healing of every mind, heart, and being on planet Earth, for the acquisition of the actual tools that release us from hell and give us back our human right. So, Jeanie, am I hearing somebody trying to tap in? Go ahead.
No, there's nobody out there. But I did get an email from Nene, who's been doing this work and has a support group going on. And she says, it's nice to hear the familiar voices on the radio. It's been a challenging trip for me. She's in Venezuela right now. It's been a challenging trip for me. All the patterns of all the generations are showing up. Her daughter is very resistant still, even after breathing her. She says she wants to heal her own way. She's got that in quotes. It has triggered my deep sadness and confusion. Where did my daughter go? I need support in dealing with feelings of sadness, great pain, and failure. I did speak to my brother on the phone, and I continue talking and creating brain cells. The first time in a country is a task. Next week, on Tuesday, I have my first Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing group here in Venezuela. Hugs. Hope to hear from you soon. So do you have anything you can offer to Nene? She's been listening from Venezuela over the Internet.
Good. Well, Nene, first of all, we definitely surround you in our love and in our support. And, if you think about some of the session, some of the material that you shared, like in the intensives here when you did teacher training and such, just take a look at, you come from generations who have found reasons to leave their children and their families behind. And you can bet those reasons involve a lot of guilt, a lot of fear, a lot of self-blame, and a lot of separation. And so in order for your daughter to heal, in order for you to heal on the next level, what you're facing is those generational patterns. And you can bet that, the dynamic when you shared with me how your father had left his family, if I remember correctly the details, they may be off a little bit, your grandfather and such had literally gone to other countries. And when you got in touch with the fact that you did that and left your child behind, what kind of pain do you suppose she was in? What kind of pain were you in? What kind of pain do you suppose those generations were in? Number one, to have done that in the first place, and number two, to have followed through and had no tools to resolve that. So my input would be, here it is, it's now up in your face. And so you get to work through it. You get to resolve all of that generational pain that's never been dealt with that led people to leave their families behind, to go to other countries, literally, and leave unresolved the issues that just couldn't be dealt with. And, whatever kinds of things were going on, troubled marriages, troubled countries, difficulty earning a livelihood, all of those things are a whole complex of forgiveness processes that as you work through this, you'll get to face in you, you'll get to move out of, and you'll get to heal for your bloodline. And so just know that we're here, we are the space, we're holding the space. I don't know if you can get Skype on your phone, on your computer there, but you can download Skype and call into the show and talk to us free. If you can get Skype, we'd love to hear your sweet voice and literally personally connect with you energetically to support this process that both you and your daughter are going through. How many of the parents in your bloodline that abandoned their children for another world, another country, another family, whatever, how many of them do you suppose had children who rejected them? And so that's going to be one of the things that's going to come up. So it sounds like perhaps you're getting to face a couple of your 77 times 70 worksheet issues. And just know we're here holding the space, sending you our deepest concern and blessings, and literally the active presence of love to support you in the process. And to support your daughter as she goes through her resistance. This is almost classic in our world today. They say teenage rebellion. Well, no, it's the hostility and fear of the generations that's playing out. And so we hold the space that will soften, if it's appropriate to soften, and that the space will open for your daughter to go on another level into the work. And you might just, as she talks about how she wants to do it her way, heal her way, you might just very gently, and you have to be careful with this question because you could easily lose your head, you might very gently just say, and how's that working for you? And, it sounds like she's going to have to admit that it hasn't worked very well. So it might be time for her to try something new and to produce a different result in her life. So that would be kind of my highest and best input. Jeanie, do you have any input for Nene? Any thoughts?
No, that pretty much covered it. And, she's definitely been a Trojan working through it piece at a time. And we definitely support you, Nene, in hanging in there and doing your work, because what it's bringing up in you, the sadness and the fear and things like that, is also what's resonating in her. And so when she sees that it's a safe enough space to move back into letting you work with her, then that'll happen. Because she was working with you and seemed to be in a fairly safe space when you were doing it by Skype over the internet when you were here in the States and she was in Venezuela. And so now you being physically in her space, it seems like maybe this has made a change. And so you might want to look at that, do some worksheets around that. Why would she feel, that it was okay to do the work with you at a distance, and now that you're actually there to give her the in-person support, that she's resistant to it?
Well, and that's a good point you bring up, Jeanie. And, when you're working with someone that you have no interaction, no personal relationship with, it's much, much easier to point out where the blockage of truth is and where the work needs to be done. But oftentimes, especially if there's blame toward you, and Nene, you've chosen to become a master at doing this work, so you're getting to face what you need to face with to achieve mastery. But when some of the blame and some of the pain seems to be about you, it takes it a whole quantum leap further to explain it in a way that doesn't sound like self-interest and doesn't sound like you're just covering your own butt, and that it's genuine, that what you're doing is supporting her. And so be aware that will very likely be a dynamic, and it can be a pretty intense dynamic to go through. I'm sure that Dr. Tim has probably never seen anything of that sort, but maybe he have a comment or two to add and some input for Nene, and especially around that topic.
Yeah, my input for Nene would be to just watch your thoughts and catch yourself when you have an insistence that your daughter has to do it your way, and realize, that this is more from my experience as a parent, and having had really good parents myself, and then my being a parent of now 24 and 23-year-olds, that they have to go through their own path. And every time I've decided they're doing it wrong, they got to do it the way I want to, it causes nothing but problems. And every time I catch myself in that and step back and do the forgiveness process to remove those judgments, usually about myself and what I've done in the past that I'm not very proud of, it opens the space for them to have a better relationship with me, and it opens the space for them to do what they need to do to move to their next level. And so I have words of encouragement and knowing it's going to work out for the best, and just gratitude for having people like Nene on the team who have, in the last year and a half, have just grabbed the work from nothing and turned it into being a teacher and an agent for change. And as you said, Michael, understanding that is just going to open the space for more intense healing on her part, which, as we know, doesn't always feel good in the early stages. But that's my input.
Sounds right on, and of course, it's not always Dr. Feelgood in the early stages or the later stages as it becomes more intense and as you dig into deeper and deeper levels. Although there's a great line in the Course in Miracles that says, problems are meaningless, but don't tell that to somebody who's in the middle of one. And to me, what that really means is that when we get on the other side of it all, it's laughable, it's a joke. And when we're on this side of it, believing it's real, believing that this is the end of the, whatever it is, then we empower it and we make it far more intense than it needs to be. And so we just hold the space, and Nene, if you can, over the next day or two, maybe download Skype. It's a free download, and it's a free call into the show. You can just call in on Skype, and we'd be able to hear your sweet voice. And maybe your daughter would even get on the show.
Absolutely. And we are now out of time. It's been a fast hour. So we want to welcome everybody to come back to us tomorrow, same time, same station.
Bring a friend. Have the best year yet of eternal life. Blessings. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Mind Shifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie, who present the internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeanie are here every Monday through Friday on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com.